A big thanks goes out to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. Well, hello everyone, and thank you ever so much for joining me for this week's video. I haven't said hello for a very long time. That used to kind of be my catchphrase. I guess I kind of grew out of it. For those of you that are new to my channel, welcome. My name's Adam Gibbs, and I'm a nature photographer living on Vancouver Island in beautiful British Columbia. Now, today I want to talk about a topic that doesn't often get the attention that perhaps it deserves, and that is aspect ratios. Now, most people think of them as just a technical setting or something you deal with in post-processing after the fact. But aspect ratios can actually be one of the most powerful compositional tools we have in our little toolbox. Aspect ratios change the feel of an image, the way the viewer moves through the frame, and even how we see the world when we're out in the field. Now, for those of you that perhaps aren't familiar with aspect ratios are simply the relationship between the width and the height of your image. So a 3:2 means that the image is 3 units wide and 2 units tall. Now, 3:2, that's the standard for full frame and APS-C cameras, but we also have 4:3, which is the GFX system that I use, and the Hasselblad, which is more of a squarer type format. And then you also have 1:1, which is square, and then you have the more cinematic aspect ratios like 16:9 and so on. And there's also really wide stuff like the Xpan or 65:24, and that's generally included in the medium format cameras. So let's start with the 3:2. It's what most of us are used to. It's what your camera probably shoots by default, and it's a decent balance ratio, but it can also be a bit of a trap. Sometimes it leaves too much space where you don't want it. Other times it just doesn't quite fit the subject. When I was shooting full frame and film cameras, most of them were 3:2. They worked great as a horizontal or landscape, but I often found that as verticals, they were too tall. They just didn't feel quite right. So I'd often not shoot verticals. And it wasn't until I started shooting 4:5 film that I started to shoot a lot more verticals, and also with the 4:3 that I have now. And you've got to remember, during the film times, you didn't have a choice of cropping in camera. You had to kind of do it after the fact. So I often find myself cropping a bit off the top or the bottom to get a 3:2 to feel right. Now, 4:3 and 5:4 are both a little squarer, and they offer a really nice balance. They help remove dead space on the edges, which really forces you to be more intentional about your compositions. And I find 4:3 great for forest scenes, tighter landscapes, and also vertical compositions where 3:2, as I said, can feel just a little bit awkward. Now, 5:4 with its large format roots has a classic feel, and I really enjoy using that format for printing. Now, 1:1 I find to be one of the most challenging to compose in, but it's also one of the most rewarding. The nice thing about 1:1 is there's no visual tension between width and height. It's neutral, and that gives you the freedom to center things, play with symmetry, or focus entirely on shape and texture. It's great for trees, abstracts, or scenes that are more balanced with movement. And when you have a whole bunch of images together, as say in a portfolio, they really do look great together as 1:1s. So if you haven't tried 1:1, give it a try. Thank you once again to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. Are you ready to take your online presence to the next level? Meet Design Intelligence by Squarespace, a fusion of world-class design and AI technology that unlocks your creative potential like never before. Build a stunning, personalized website that's as unique as you are and stands out from the crowd. With Squarespace Payments, managing transactions is easier than ever. Get started in just a few clicks and let your customers pay their way, whether it's Apple Pay, Afterpay, or more. Need to invoice clients? Squarespace has you covered. Simplify your workflow and focus on growing your business. If you're interested in building an awesome website, why not head on over to squarespace.com and give it a try. And if you like what you find, use the code AdamGibbs for 10% off your first purchase. Now, there is 16:9, the cinematic ratio. I have to be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of 16:9, even though I do use it. It does feel familiar because of video, but in photography, I guess it can bring a really expansive flowing energy to landscapes. It's perfect for sweeping mountain scenes, shorelines, or big skies. But you have to be careful with it because it compresses the vertical space. It can make images feel flat, especially if the subject doesn't carry enough horizontal weight. I personally much prefer the 65:24 or the Xpan ratio. And it's a format that I'm personally drawn to. When I started using the 65:24 was really when I started using the Fujifilm GFX system. I used to do the odd pano, you do a bunch of verticals or horizontals and then stitch them all together. But I found that it was kind of a bit hit and miss. The nice thing about having that ratio built into the camera is that I can really see what I'm cropping out nicely. And that's why I've been using it a lot. I really do love that format. And it's funny, a lot of my friends that use either Hasselblad's or the Fujifilm system find that they shoot a lot more panos. And I really wish that a lot of camera manufacturers would put that format in. Now, I do realize that you're losing half of your megapixels, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. Especially doesn't matter with the Hasselblad or the GFX system because you have a 100 megapixel sensor as it is. But even with the smaller sensors, I think it would be a great addition to a lot of cameras. The nice thing about the 65:24, it's immersive, dramatic, and it forces you to think differently. It's not just a wide crop, it's a whole different way of seeing. You do need strong horizontal design, negative space, and a subject that holds the frame together across the length. Otherwise, it just feels stretched and empty. But it does force you to look left to right or right to left because there's no vertical to that format. So that's why I really love it. When it does work, it really works well. So it's worth trying out. Now, one of the best ways to use aspect ratios, I find, is before you take the shot. It's funny, over the last maybe 2 or 3 years, I pretty much use the different aspect ratios for every single shot that I take. I'll go through the different aspect ratios. Now, I do have some favorites. I have 4:5 that I really love, 4:3, 65:24, and the 1:1. And every time I'll see a scene, I'll try different aspect ratios just to see if it might work better as a different crop. It's a really helpful compositional tool. Now, many modern cameras let you overlay crops like 1:1, 16:9, even if you're shooting RAW. So this really can help with your compositions, and it helps you compose with intent right in the field. Now, I do this all the time, as I mentioned. If the scene feels boxy, I might go 4:3. If it's wide open, I'll try 16:9 or 65:24. It really does help me refine what I'm looking at, and it simplifies the framing. Cropping does have its limits. You do lose resolution, as I mentioned, and sometimes you crop away so much that you might weaken the image. So use aspect ratios as tools, not filters. Let the subject guide the frame, not the other way around. Next time you're out in the field with your camera, don't just default to what the sensor gives you. Think about the shape of your frame. Ask yourself, does the scene want to feel expansive, intimate, balanced, and so on? I highly encourage you to play with different aspect ratios both in the field and in post. After a while, you'll start to see your compositions evolve in really interesting ways. Alright guys, thank you ever so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you did find this video useful, please feel free to like, subscribe, and perhaps let me know in the comments down below what aspect ratios you prefer or what you tend to gravitate towards when you're out in the field and why. Before I leave you, I just wanted to mention I'm having a free print giveaway. I'm giving away 5 10:13 prints. All you have to do is head on over to my website and sign up for my newsletter. It's at adamgibbs.com. My newsletter comes out maybe once every 1 month or every 2 months, very rarely, but I like to advertise my up and coming workshops, and I'll often put in a little bit of a description or a story about a recent trip that I've taken. So I'd really appreciate that if you're interested in the print giveaway. Don't worry, for those of you that have already signed up for my newsletter, I will include you in that giveaway. All right, everybody, thank you ever so much, and until next time, cheerio.